My parents sold my college fund and kicked me out for their golden son. Years later, they crawled back broke and desperate, but all I offered was a cold, final lesson in what their accident could really become. That's what my mom told me 5 months ago during Thanksgiving dinner, like it was a fun fact. Everyone heard it, and no, it wasn't even the first time she said that. The first time was 10 years earlier, right after I asked why everything in the house revolved around Andrew, my older brother. I was 18. That night they kicked me out. Now I'm 31, male, CEO of a financial firm, 7 figures, penthouse, real suits, not the stuff you rent for prom. And yeah, they want back in. They've tried the whole but we're family line. Some people say I'm wrong for cutting them off. So here's the start of it. You tell me. I was born in a decent house, 2 parents, 2 incomes, suburbs, a backyard with a cracked trampoline. It looked normal from the outside, but I was never supposed to be in the picture. My parents had Andrew, 33, male, 2 years before me, and they were content. He was their golden boy from day one, blonde hair, perfect teeth, the kind of kid who scored goals and smiled for every camera. Teachers loved him, coaches praised him, my parents treated him like the second coming of Wall Street Jesus. Then I came along. I wasn't planned. They told me that proudly. My mom used to joke, "You were a little oopsie," but it wasn't a joke when I heard her say to my aunt, over the phone, "Andrew was meant to succeed. Matthew just came along for the ride." That sentence stuck. It still does. Growing up, everything in our house bent around Andrew. The guy never cleaned up after himself. He'd throw his dirty laundry across the hallway like a dog marking territory. My mom would just sigh, "Boys will be boys," and pick it up. Meanwhile, if I left my cereal bowl in the sink, she'd lose her mind. "You're old enough to be responsible." Andrew got a brand new mountain bike when he turned 13, not some cheap Walmart special. One of those $600 giants with gear shifters and front shocks. When I turned 13, I got a used bookshelf and a $10 Target lamp. "You like reading," they said. I remember once Andrew accidentally crashed my dad's old Honda. Backing it out of the driveway, he screwed up the bumper and taillight. Guess who they blamed? Me. They said I distracted him while I was inside doing math homework. But the king of all moments came during his high school graduation. They threw him a full-blown party, tents in the backyard, rented speakers, a banner, food trays from some Italian place. My mom invited everyone, neighbors, CO workers, random people from church. They made a toast and gave him a new watch. When I graduated 2 years later, I got a small chocolate cake on a paper plate and a "You're lucky we're busy this weekend." And no, I didn't fail. I graduated with a 3.9 GPA, worked part-time at a grocery store to help with bills, and never got into any trouble. But that wasn't enough. Not when you're standing next to Andrew, the future lawyer. He wasn't even a good dude. Dude was smooth, I'll give him that. He could lie with a smile and charm your wallet out of your pocket. Teachers thought he was brilliant, but I saw his search history. Half his schoolwork was bought online. My dad found out once and shrugged it off. He's learning to delegate. That's leadership. Meanwhile, if I forgot to vacuum one Saturday, I'd get a full 20-minute lecture on how I'd never survive in the real world. Once I needed $20 for a school field trip. It took me 4 days to get it. Andrew came home once with $200 missing from my dad's wallet, said it fell out. No one blinked. By the time I was 17, I had a job, a solid GPA, and barely left my room. Not because I was emo or depressed. I was tired of proving, of talking, of trying. Andrew strutted through life like everything was owed to him. He was that guy who thought he was too good to wait in line, too smart to study, and too important to be wrong. The worst part, the world let him get away with it, and so did our parents. I think they liked the version of him they made up in their heads more than the real one. I remember this one night. We were both sitting in the living room. He was on the couch scrolling through his phone. I was on the floor fixing my laptop with a busted hinge. I'd been saving for months to buy a new one, but couldn't afford it yet. I asked him if he had any leftover parts or cables from his old machine. He laughed and said, "You should just ask Mom and Dad to get you a new one." Worked for me. I looked at him. He wasn't joking. He actually believed that if he asked, he'd get it, and he wasn't wrong. They bought him a MacBook the following week to help him with college apps. I was still taping the corner of my screen every night. So yeah, by the time I hit 18, I knew what the deal was. I was the extra, the spare tire, the backup plan. They weren't cruel about it, that's the thing. It was worse than cruel. It was polite indifference. And when I finally brought it up, asked why I always got the short end, they didn't even argue. My dad folded his paper and said, "You need to stop being dramatic." And my mom looked me dead in the eye and said the thing I'll never forget: "We only wanted one child." Straight face, no hesitation. That's when I knew it didn't matter how much I worked, helped, studied, saved, or stayed out of trouble. I wasn't a son to them. I was just the leftover. You know the one thing that made everything else tolerable? I didn't care about sneakers, parties, or prom. All I wanted was my own custom-built gaming PC. It wasn't even about gaming, not really. It was about ownership, control, something that was mine, that I built from the ground up, piece by piece. No handouts, no begging, just me. A summer job and a spreadsheet taped to my wall tracking every part: CPU, GPU, RAM, case, PSU. I used to watch PC building YouTube channels like they were religion. Every extra shift at the grocery store went into that build. I skipped meals sometimes just to save more. I didn't spend on clothes, didn't upgrade my cracked phone, didn't go out. My friends called me frugal. Truth, I was desperate. I was finally going to have something that couldn't be taken from me. Or so I thought. By the time I was 17, I had just over $1,400 saved. Enough to get a mid-tier but solid setup. Ryzen chip, 16 gigabytes RAM, decent graphics card. I even planned to paint the case myself with matte black and gold detailing. That money sat in a shoebox under my bed for months. I didn't trust banks, and ironically, I especially didn't trust my parents. That shoebox was my vault. I kept the bills wrapped in a rubber band like a broken little mobster. I'd pull it out at night and flip through the stack just to remind myself it was real, until the day it wasn't. It was a Sunday. Andrew had just gotten back from some 2-day business mentorship retreat he found online, walked through the door like he'd been crowned emperor of tech startups, aviators on inside, some knockoff leather briefcase swinging at his hip. Mom rushed to greet him like he'd returned from war. "How was it, sweetheart? Did you learn anything?" He smiled like a politician. "Mom, I've got a pitch deck and everything. I just need startup capital. They said I've got potential." She looked at him like he was Elon Musk's younger cousin. "We'll figure something out." That sentence should have raised alarms. Instead, I went upstairs minding my own business. 2 days later, I came home from my shift. My shoebox was gone, not moved, gone. I tore through the closet, flipped every drawer, lifted the bed, checked under the mattress, nothing. At first I thought maybe Mom cleaned my room again. She had this habit of going in unannounced. Treated my space like it was a storage unit she rented out. I marched downstairs. "Mom, have you seen my shoebox?" She didn't look up from her crossword puzzle. "What shoebox?" "The one under my bed with the money, the PC savings." She paused just for a second. That pause said everything. "Your dad and I needed it for something important," she said like she was talking about borrowing the car. I blinked. "You what?" She finally looked up. "It was just sitting there, and it's not like you're using it for anything urgent." I stared at her, jaw clenched. "It was for my computer." She waved her hand like I'd said I was saving for action figures. "We'll make it up to you." Turns out something important was Andrew's startup fund. The kid wanted to create an app that paired gym trainers with clients. He called it FitFuse or some garbage like that. He had no coding background, no plan, just buzzwords and ego. "And my parents ate it up like gospel. He just needs a chance," Dad told me when I confronted him later. I replied, "So you stole my chance to give him one?" He didn't flinch. "It's not stealing if it stays in the family." I swear I felt my blood pressure spike like I aged 10 years in one sentence. I locked myself in my room for the rest of that night, laid on my bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning like it was mocking me. That PC was my escape plan, my one joy, my tiny rebellion against being the unwanted one, and they sold it off like it was spare furniture. What made it worse? Andrew didn't even say thank you, no acknowledgement, no apology, not even a nod. He acted like the money had fallen from the sky, and a month later the app flopped, the website never launched. He spent half the money on a refurbished MacBook and some branding consultant who ghosted him. The other half gone in gas, Uber Eats, and one extremely dumb attempt to bribe a community college classmate to build the app. That night he came home and said, "Turns out the startup world's tougher than it looks," then laughed. I laughed too, then punched a hole in my closet door the second he left the room. They never paid me back. Every time I asked, it was some version of "we'll talk later" or "don't be petty." Mom even pulled the emotional blackmail card. "Do you have any idea how hard it is to raise 2 boys on a budget?" I said, "Then maybe you shouldn't have robbed the one who wasn't throwing money down the drain." She looked offended, like I was the problem. That's when I realized this wasn't about money. It never was. They didn't think I deserved the same chances. They didn't see me as someone they invested in. They saw me as a resource to be drained for the real son's benefit. You want to know the worst part? A few weeks after the whole thing fell apart, I walked past the living room and heard them talking. Dad, Andrew just needs more time. He's got vision. Matthew's too rigid. He wouldn't know what to do with opportunity anyway. I stood there, back to the wall, listening to my father basically say I wasn't built for success, while I was the one working double shifts, paying for my own books, stacking every dollar like it was a life raft, and Andrew still getting praised for failing upwards. That was the day something inside me cracked. I stopped asking for anything. I started putting money directly into a new savings account I opened secretly at a different credit union under my own name. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't leave the bank card at home. I stopped mentioning anything I bought or saved for. If I wanted something, I got it quietly. No bragging, no updates, no more trust. But the betrayal burned under the surface. I carried it with me every day like a scar on the inside of my mouth, silent but raw. And the irony, that betrayal was just the prelude, because what they did next made the stolen PC money feel like a parking ticket. It was a few months after my 18th birthday. College acceptance letters were rolling in. I got into a strong business program, top 10 in the state. My heart was pounding when I opened the envelope. I remember rereading the words "we are pleased to inform you," like I was hallucinating. I had the grades, I had some scholarships, but I still needed help covering the gap. So I did something I swore I wouldn't. I asked my parents for help. That conversation deserves its own chapter, because that's when they told me the college fund I'd been building since I was 15, under my dad's name, was gone too. That's when the last string snapped. That's when I finally saw them not as parents but as people who never saw me as a son. I still remember the envelope, thick cardstock, blue seal, the kind that screams "we matter more than you." When I opened it, I didn't feel like I'd made it. I felt relief, like maybe I wasn't as useless as my parents made me feel every time Andrew got praised for tying his shoes. The letter said I'd been accepted into the University of Michigan's Ross Business School, not community college, not some joke diploma mill, Ross. I was 18, and for the first time I thought I had a shot at building something real. I waited until dinner to tell them. Big mistake. We were eating spaghetti, one of those bland weekday meals where nobody said anything unless the TV was too loud. Dad was halfway through slicing an apple when I cleared my throat. I got accepted into Michigan, I said, calm, like I was trying not to sound desperate for approval. Nobody flinched. My mom looked up, nodded. Oh, that's nice. That's it, no questions, no congratulations, no "I'm proud of you," just a flat, dry nod like I told her I took the trash out. Andrew across the table didn't even blink. He was pouring soda like this was beneath him. I laid the letter on the table. I got a partial scholarship. I still need to cover about $20,000 a year. If you guys can help with the first year, I can get loans and work to handle the rest. Dad didn't even look up. We don't have it. That sentence was surgical, cold, direct, no sugarcoat, just a verbal boot to the ribs. I blinked. I've been saving since I was 15. That account, my college fund, it should have close to $12,000 in it. The room went still. My mom froze. Dad looked up finally and said, "We used it. Used it, no warning, no heads up, not even a conversation." Used it on what? I asked, my voice cracking even though I swore I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Andrew needed help, my mom said, folding her napkin like she was done with the subject. His pre-law program wasn't cheap. I didn't speak. Couldn't. Andrew took a slow sip of soda. Didn't say a word. Let me be clear. I worked from the age of 15. Grocery store, dishwasher. Hell, I even helped repaint fences in the neighborhood for side cash. Every dollar that didn't go to bills went into that account. I couldn't open one myself until I turned 18, so my dad offered to keep it safe under his name. He promised, "I won't touch a cent. It's yours." And now it was gone. I pushed my chair back. It made that screeching sound you hear before fights. "So you stole from me?" I said. Dad's face hardened. "Don't start with the drama." Mom chimed in, voice sharp. "You're not entitled to that money. This family made sacrifices for you. You're not the only one with needs." "Yeah," I snapped, "but I'm the only one pulling my weight." Her fork hit the plate. "Excuse me? I've worked for everything, while Andrew sits on his ass pitching failed apps and burning other people's money, and you reward him again with my savings." Andrew finally spoke. "Don't make this personal, man. You're not the only one trying." "Trying?" I barked. "You blew $2,000 on fake logos and Thai takeout, and now my future's gone." That's when Dad slammed his hand on the table. "You need to leave." Just like that. Not go cool off, not we'll talk later. Just leave. I stood there frozen. Mom crossed her arms. "We gave you a roof, food, clothes, and this is how you speak to us? Get out of this house if you think you're so grown." I stared at Andrew, still sitting, still silent, nothing to say, You heard all of this. You saw what they did. You going to back me up? He shrugged. That shrug was worse than every insult, every lie, every stolen dollar. I grabbed my bag, no shoes, no jacket, didn't matter. I wasn't staying. I walked out into the night with my breath fogging up and my chest on fire. It wasn't cold enough to freeze, but it felt colder than I've ever been. The porch light buzzed behind me. The door slammed shut like it couldn't wait to erase me. 10 minutes later, it creaked open. It was my mom. She didn't look at me. Just tossed out 2 backpacks like she was dropping off trash. One's got your stuff. The other's junk we didn't want. Go wherever you want. Then the door closed again, final. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I just stood there like a glitch in their perfect little family software, uninstall complete. I don't know how long I stood there, but eventually I picked up those bags and walked down the street. No plan, no backup. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, and called the only person I trusted, Jason. Jason was my best friend from high school. We used to trade notes in history class and roast the guidance counselor behind his back. Chill guy. Never asked too many questions, never treated me like I was less. He picked up after 2 rings. I said, "Hey, you free?" He said, "Where are you? I'm coming." 30 minutes later, he pulled up in his beat-up Toyota. Faded paint, duct-taped side mirror, smell of old fries. Never been happier to see a junk car in my life. He didn't ask what happened, he just said, "Get in." That night I crashed on a mattress in his living room, used a hoodie as a pillow. The ceiling fan clicked every 4 seconds. The place smelled like old laundry and ramen seasoning, but I felt more safe there than I ever had at home. I stared at the ceiling all night, wide awake, mind spinning, not about revenge, not even about college, just one thought: I'm on my own now, and no one's coming to help. The next morning I woke up to the smell of bacon and eggs. Jason's mom was in the kitchen. "Are you staying for breakfast?" I nodded. She didn't press, didn't ask about my parents, just made me a plate like I was part of the house. First meal I'd had in weeks that didn't taste like resentment. 3 days later I got a text from my grandfather, "Come over." I heard what happened. That's it, no emojis, no fluff. I took the bus to his place. He opened the door wearing a bathrobe and an old t-shirt that said "Retired but dangerous, didn't waste time, is it true?" I nodded. He sat down. "Your dad always was an idiot." That's the closest thing I ever heard him say that resembled anger. Then he leaned forward, hands steepled. "You're not staying with Jason forever, you're coming here." I blinked. "You're serious?" He nodded. "That house forgot how to be a family a long time ago. But you're still blood, you still matter." He cleared out his home office, made it a room for me. Small creaky bed, old desk, clean window, walls lined with books and random war memorabilia. I didn't care, it felt safe. Like a base. He didn't baby me, didn't give me money. But he gave me something I hadn't had in years, a choice. He said, "Go to college or don't, but don't give them the power to decide your worth." That sentence stuck, it became fuel. I applied for federal loans that same week, got approved, found a part-time job at a coffee shop, worked mornings, took classes at night, biked to campus in freezing wind with holes in my gloves, ate instant noodles, studied until my eyes burned. But I never asked my parents for a damn thing again. They cut me off, fine. I'd show them what a mistake really looked like when it outruns them, outbuilds them, and never looks back. I was 18, broke, and sleeping on a borrowed mattress with 2 backpacks and no clue what came next. But I knew one thing for sure. If I went back to that house, I wasn't walking out a second time. So I didn't look back. I put my head down and moved. First thing I did was get a job at a coffee shop near campus. They didn't ask many questions. The manager liked that I showed up early, didn't complain, and knew how to keep my head down. I worked the opening shift, 6 a.m. to noon, cleaning tables, burning my fingers on espresso machines, sweeping sidewalks before the sun even came up. The pay was trash, but it was enough to keep me moving. Dorms were tight. I shared a room the size of a closet with a guy who snored like a dying engine and left his socks everywhere. Didn't matter. It was mine. I had a student ID, a schedule, a laptop that barely held a charge, and a list of classes that looked like a death sentence. I applied for every scholarship, grant, and low-interest loan I could find, took whatever help I could get, but never from my parents, not a single call. Not even a fake birthday text. It was like I died and they forgot the funeral, which honestly made things easier. College wasn't some movie montage, it was brutal. During midterms, I'd sleep maybe 3 hours a night. When my shift ended, I'd run to class, then go back to the coffee shop to close on weekends. I ate cup noodles in library stairwells. My clothes smelled like burnt milk and sweat. I missed more events than I can count. Some nights I'd come back to the dorms and just stare at the ceiling, muscles twitching from exhaustion, wondering if this was even worth it. But every time I thought about quitting, I saw their faces again. My mom's cold stare. My dad's smug tone. Andrew's silence. I remembered the PC money, the college fund, the night they tossed my bags like garbage, and suddenly I wasn't tired anymore. There was one person who stayed in touch. My Aunt Everly. She wasn't loud about it, just little check-ins, a text before exams, a call after a rough week. She'd swing by once a month with hot food or cold meds. She never asked for details, never pushed for gossip. Once I told her I was fine, and she said, "You don't have to be. Just keep going." She didn't take sides, but I could see the guilt in her eyes whenever my parents came up. She didn't make excuses for them. She didn't try to fix anything. She just showed up, quiet, consistent, and exactly when I needed it. Graduation came fast. I was 22, standing on a crowded lawn in a cheap gown, holding a degree with my name on it. The sun was out, the wind was light, and I didn't scan the crowd. I already knew they weren't there. They didn't even know the date, but Everly was. She sat 3 rows from the back with a bouquet of gas station flowers and a proud smile that said everything I never heard from my parents. I didn't cry, didn't get emotional. I just looked at her, nodded, and said, "I made it." 3 months later, I got an offer from a mid-sized financial firm in Chicago. Salary was $72,000 starting, more than fair for a fresh grad. I accepted on the spot. I moved into a shared apartment with 2 other guys, one who played guitar at midnight and another who stole food like a raccoon. Didn't care, I was working, I was building. I tracked every dollar, split paychecks into rent, loans, savings, and don't touch unless you're dying money. I skipped vacations, turned down parties, lived on black coffee and pre-packed rice bowls. Every dollar was ammo, every hour was leverage. 4 years passed. By 26, I'd paid off every loan and had 5 figures in savings. No debt, no help, no shortcuts, just grind. The turning point wasn't dramatic, it came in a small moment. I was sitting in a team meeting watching a bunch of execs debate over a company's liquidity crisis. They were going in circles spewing jargon, but I saw the answer clear as day. I wrote it out, showed it to my supervisor after the meeting. He looked at it for 5 seconds and said, "Damn, this could have saved us an hour." I wasn't trying to impress, I was just wired different. I understood money because I had to fight for every cent. These guys played with it, I survived on it. That's when I started thinking I could do this better. The idea of starting my own firm started as a whisper, but didn't leave. I'd catch myself rewriting pitch decks in my head, rethinking how meetings were run. I started studying mergers in my free time, took online courses on business law, wrote plans in a Google Doc no one knew about. I didn't tell anyone, not even Jason. But every night after work, after the gym, after dinner, I'd stay up mapping it out. Clients, services, structure, numbers, no fantasy talk, no hype, just the math. Lynx Capital started as a file name on my laptop. It became real when I pulled the trigger. I took $20,000 out of savings, rented a small office on the 3rd floor of a busted building, no windows, water stains on the ceiling. I hired 2 interns and a secretary from Craigslist, used folding chairs for the first 2 months, no website, just a mission. We don't sell fluff, we fix problems fast. Our first client came through a contact at my old job. Their books were a mess. Cash flow was bleeding. We cleaned it up in 6 weeks. After that, word spread. By the time I turned 30, Lynx Capital was pulling 7 figures. I wasn't rich yet, but I was finally undeniable. Then Thanksgiving happened. Out of nowhere, Everly called and asked me to come to dinner, said the whole family would be there. My first instinct, hang up. But she said one thing that changed my mind: it's time for them to see who you became and who they lost. I didn't go for peace, I went to confront, not with yelling, not with fists, with facts. I pulled up to her house in a clean black car, nothing flashy, just sharp, carried a bottle of wine that cost enough to make a point, walked in and scanned the room. There they were, my parents, Andrew, same smug posture, same fake smiles. When they saw me, they barely reacted. Andrew smirked. "Well, look who decided to crawl back." I didn't respond, didn't need to. I just watched, quiet, collected, and waited for the moment. Because this time I wasn't the kid who got kicked out. I was the guy who held the hammer. The thing about returning to a place that once broke you, you don't feel small anymore, you feel surgical. I didn't show up to Thanksgiving wearing a crown. I showed up in a charcoal suit with quiet confidence. Everly opened the door before I knocked. "You came?" I nodded. "You asked." Inside the house was already loud, clinking forks, shuffling chairs, TV humming in the background. But as soon as I stepped in, the energy shifted. Some faces turned, some blinked like they'd seen a ghost. Others acted like I was just a cousin from out of town. My parents didn't even pretend to be awkward. My dad gave me a nod like I was the plumber here to fix the leak. My mom raised an eyebrow, then turned away like she smelled something stale. Andrew made sure to be louder than everyone else. Well, 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 look who finally came home. That's a nice bottle, Maddie. You trying to impress us? I smiled. Short, clean, I don't try. I walked past him, didn't break stride. Just enough to make it clear I wasn't here to perform. I was here to observe. Everly made space at the dinner table. I sat, sipped my water, and listened. For 45 minutes I said nothing, just watched Andrew work the room like a wedding DJ, telling stories, name-dropping, tossing in buzzwords he barely understood. And now with this new client, my team's looking at closing a $2 million deal. That caught attention. People turned, chattered, dipped. My mother chimed in like she'd rehearsed it. It's with Lynx Capital, very big name now. You've probably seen them in the business news. My father nodded proudly, one of the top financial firms in the state.
I nearly laughed but didn't, because I already knew what they didn't. The company Andrew was bragging about was mine. He wasn't on the deal, wasn't in the meetings, wasn't even on the radar.
I personally negotiated that contract. Spent 6 weeks going back and forth with Bennett and Rowe Capital's director. Andrew must have overheard something at work and decided to LARP his way into the credit. And here he was spinning it like he just rescued the economy. I sipped my water, let the room eat it up. The moment a strike would come, and when it did, it wouldn't be loud, it would be surgical. That moment came when a relative, some aunt on my mom's side, turned to me between bites of mashed potatoes and asked, "And what about you, Matthew? What are you up to these days?" Dead silence. My dad's fork stopped mid-air. My mom looked down. Before I could open my mouth, my father cut in, "Matthew hasn't done anything worth mentioning." I stayed quiet. He continued, "He's always been a little off track. You know, not everyone finds their place in life. He was kind of, well, an accident. We only ever planned for one child." Someone gasped, someone else coughed. Andrew smirked. I didn't flinch. I'd heard that line too many times. But this time someone else responded. Everly stood up slowly, set her glass down. "That's enough." Her voice wasn't loud, but it sliced through the room like a mic drop. "You don't feel embarrassed saying that in front of all these people?" She turned, eyes sharp. "That mistake you disowned. He's the one who built something out of nothing. He's the one who never took a cent from you after you kicked him out with a pair of torn-up backpacks. And you're sitting here acting like he owes you silence." She looked around the room, then landed on Andrew. "And Matthew isn't just doing fine. He's the founder and CEO of Lynx Capital. Yes, that Lynx Capital. And he didn't need to use anyone's name to get there." The room froze. Andrew's face dropped like a bad poker hand, but he recovered fast. Cocky people always do. He stood up, tone dripping with fake laughter. "That's ridiculous. Are we just making things up now? Matthew's the CEO? Please, I'm literally about to close a deal with them, and I've never even seen his name in the emails." He looked at me, smiling, daring me to flinch. Mom jumped in. "This boy's always been a dreamer, always reaching for things out of his league." Dad followed. "What's he ever built? Some paper company in a rented office?" I waited. Let them finish. Then I said one sentence. "You have 5 minutes to apologize." Dead quiet. Someone dropped a fork. My mom actually laughed. "Apologize for what?" I stood up, calm, hands in my pockets. I wasn't going to embarrass anyone tonight, but since we're making things public, fine. I pulled out my phone, walked to the side of the room, and dialed. Everyone watched. It rang once, then connected. "Jack, it's Matthew. Quick question. You know Andrew Peterson?" There was a pause. "Who?" "He works at Bennett and Rowe. Says he's closing the Lynx Capital deal." Another pause. Then Jack's voice came back sharp and loud enough through the phone for people nearby to hear. "That clown has never even been in the room. Who gave him permission to speak on our behalf?" I thanked him and hung up. 2 minutes later, Andrew's phone started ringing. He stared at the screen like it was on fire. He answered, walked away, but not fast enough. Jack's voice boomed through the speaker. "You ever pretend to represent this company again, I'll have you blacklisted from every financial firm in the city. Do you understand me?" Andrew's voice dropped to a whisper. "Yes, sir, I'm sorry." I sat back down. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. I looked at my father. "Still think I haven't done anything worth mentioning?" He stared at his plate. My mom opened her mouth, then shut it. Andrew returned, white as paper, sweating through his dress shirt. No one clapped, no one defended him. The silence was delicious. Everly leaned over and whispered, "That was overdue." I stood up again, buttoned my jacket. "If you'll excuse me, I think I've had enough." She grabbed my wrist. "Thank you for showing up." I nodded, "Thank you for being the only one who ever did." And I walked out. 2 days later, the fallout landed. I was in a boardroom when the receptionist buzzed my line. "Mr. Peterson, there's a group downstairs, 4 adults and 1 child. They say they're your family, they're asking to speak to you." I pulled up the lobby cam. There they were, Mom, Dad, Andrew, his wife, his kid, all of them. Andrew looked wrecked. I didn't take the call, I called my lawyer instead. 10 minutes later, he met them in the lobby, no smiles, no greetings, just paperwork. "I'm here on behalf of Mr. Matthew Peterson. You are to cease all contact, verbal, physical, digital. Any further harassment will be met with legal consequences." Andrew tried to interrupt, got shut down. Security walked them out without drama. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, Andrew got fired. Bennett and Rowe didn't make a scene, they just cut him loose. Security walked him out of the building before lunch, badge deactivated, access revoked, name stripped from the email directory by 3 p.m. I didn't call it in, I didn't have to. Jack pulled the plug himself. By the end of the week, Andrew's name was unofficially blacklisted across every mid-level finance firm in the state. The guy went from wearing $400 loafers to begging recruiters to call him back. Didn't work. Nobody wants a fraud. Andrew tried to pivot, said he'd start his own consulting group, built a site on Wix, made a LinkedIn post full of buzzwords, 2 likes, no clients. 6 weeks later, the site disappeared. Then came the debts. Turns out Andrew had been living on borrowed money and fake promises, car loan, personal loan, credit cards, a failed crypto side hustle, and a $40,000 business investment he took from a family friend who finally wanted it back. He couldn't pay any of it, so he did what golden children do when things collapse. He ran home to Mommy and Daddy. But the house wasn't safe either. Dad had taken out a second mortgage years ago to invest in Andrew's future. The payments were getting tight. Mom had stopped working after her hip surgery. Savings dried up. When the foreclosure notice hit the mailbox, my mom called my aunt first, begged her to help. My aunt said she didn't have the money. Then she called me, didn't even use my name, opened with "We're in trouble, no how are you, no we're sorry." Just a straight shot beg like I owed them something. I didn't yell, didn't hang up, I listened. She said they were behind on everything, that my dad's credit was shot, that they were trying to find a smaller place but no one would approve them without a CO signer, that Andrew was going through a hard time, that the baby was sick, that rent prices were outrageous, that I wouldn't understand because I've never had to worry about money. That last part almost made me laugh. I said one sentence, "You made your decision when you sold my future for his." She didn't reply. I hung up. A week later, they showed up in person. The receptionist buzzed my office line again. "Mr. Peterson, your family is in the lobby." I didn't even look at the camera this time. I called legal, escalate it. They got served that afternoon, a cease and desist with an additional clause. Any further uninvited contact would trigger legal action for harassment. I watched the footage afterward. They didn't cry, didn't scream, they just stood there stunned, then left. They never came back. 2 months later, I got a text from my aunt. One line, "They're staying in a shelter near the west side. House is gone. Credit's gone. They're broke." That was it. Andrew applied for bankruptcy. My father tried to drive for Uber, got denied for insurance reasons. My mom filed for early Social Security and got denied on a technicality. The shelter let them stay for 30 days, then they were rotated out. They tried couch hopping, no one wanted them. Jason sent me a photo once, my parents outside a public library with 2 plastic bags and no plan. Dad sitting on a bench staring into nothing. Mom trying to keep her phone charged off a wall socket. Andrew was nowhere to be seen. Guess he bailed when things got real. 3 weeks after that, I got a letter. Handwritten, no return address, folded 3 times. It said, "We made mistakes. We know, but we're still your parents. Please don't let us die like this." It wasn't signed. I recognized my father's handwriting. I didn't respond, didn't shred it either. I stapled it to the back of my old college acceptance letter, the one they shrugged off, and filed it. Proof. That's all it was.